Are you ready, kids?
Aye, aye, Captain!
Good to know, cause I don't know if I am. If you're wondering why, we're getting 2 SpongeBob films this year, and I don't really have a whole lot of interest in either of them. I haven't been that impressed with the last 2 films we've gotten, and it's getting hard for me to be interested in a new one nowadays. But I'm the person that wants to keep an open mind towards any film, and it's been proven I can be surprised by films I wasn't anxious to see a handful of times. So, hey, I guess we gotta go with the flow. Right? Right. So, let's talk about the first of the 2 SpongeBob movies coming out this year, and for what it's worth, I was more curious about this one. Our next film we have to talk about is another SpongeBob spin-off film called Plankton the Movie, which follows the famed antagonist of the show, Plankton, the owner of the chum bucket who was desperate for love and attention and tries desperately to steal the Krabby Patty formula from the Krusty Krab. And as I said previously, I wasn't hyped to see this, mainly because the last time we got a SpongeBob spin-off film, it face-planted quite badly into a puddle of radioactive mud. That, of course, was Saving Bikini Bottom, the Sandy Cheeks movie, and I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it because I already made a whole-length video talking about it, and you all know that I absolutely hated it. It was one of the worst animated films I've ever seen, and was just an embarrassing executive-driven mess all around. And I'm not the only one who hates it. I don't think I've seen an animated film get this much of a visceral hatred from people in a long time, because everyone I know who saw this thing did not like it. Again, I feel so bad for the film's director, Liza Johnson. She's a very talented filmmaker, but she was clearly out of her depth making that film, and never should have been hired to direct it to begin with. I still don't understand why Nickelodeon chose her almost 7 months later. So, yeah, considering how awful the last SpongeBob spin-off film was, you can imagine that I didn't have much excitement for another one, especially one coming out less than a year after the last film. And I'm fairly certain this probably wouldn't be coming out if this film hadn't been produced simultaneously with Saving Bikini Bottom. And I know that it was being made around the same time as that film, because right after Saving Bikini Bottom came out on Netflix, Plankton the movie was also leaked online, which... How does that happen twice? Are Netflix's security passwords 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Seriously, how? Though, once again, I didn't watch this film when it was leaked because I don't like watching leaked content, and I waited until now to see this, even if I didn't have the highest expectations. But at the very least, I can say I didn't think this film looked horrendous. The bar was pretty much on the floor after the last film, so it was obvious it was gonna clear it. And I will say that there were things about it that did make me a bit more satisfied that it wouldn't be terrible. First off, the director they chose, Dave Needham, was a better choice than Liza Johnson, given that he does have background directing at Nickelodeon, and for animation, so obviously he would have had more knowledge and experience with this series. Secondly, the premise sounded much better, as well as given that it was originated by storyman Mr. Lawrence, who's also the voice of Plankton, and if there's anyone who knows this character better than anyone, it's easily him. Not to mention, all the writers have experience with the show, and also have better credentials than the writer of Saving Bikini Bottom, as one of the writers of that film also wrote An American Werewolf in Paris. Explains a lot in retrospect, doesn't it? And also, it looked visually more pleasing and not a train wreck like Saving Bikini Bottom by just a slim bit. By the way, did you know the cinematographer of Saving Bikini Bottom also shot Son of the Mask? Yeah, everything's just clicking into place, isn't it? So, yeah, even though I wasn't terribly hyped for Plankton the movie, I wasn't completely turned off by it either. So, I was pretty open to give this a fair shot. And let's just get this out of the way right now. Yes, this is better than Saving Bikini Bottom. I mean, duh. The bar was set so low that it might as well be on the ground, and I can say that this film is a massive improvement over it. That being said, I just thought the end product was... fine. Plankton the movie in a nutshell is... fine. It's nothing great by any means, but it's certainly not terrible. It doesn't reach the heights of the first two SpongeBob movies by any means, but compared to Sponge on the Run and Saving Bikini Bottom, this is certainly an improvement, and a film I did have a bit of fun with, even though it does have a fair share of problems. Overall, I thought it was okay. Bikini Bottom, the evil owner of the Chum Bucket, Plankton, played again by Mr. Lawrence, has continued to fail at stealing the Krabby Patty formula from the Krusty Krab, as well as starting his world domination scheme, with his last attempt backfiring once again. Angered at his stubborn attitude and tired of being treated like dirt, his computer wife Karen, played again by Jill Talley, finally snaps and decides to take over the world herself, removing her empathy chip from her computer program and building a giant super weapon by scooping up Bikini Bottom. Hoping to stop his wife and hopefully win her back, Plankton teams up with SpongeBob, played again by Tom Kenny, to figure out the root of the problem and get back with Karen before it's too late. For starters, I can say that this premise is genuinely a fun one. The idea of a film following Plankton trying to stop Karen from dominating the world herself after she snaps is one that has potential. And for what it's worth, the film does shine when it really focuses on the two. The biggest benefit the film has is really diving deep into the relationship between Plankton and Karen as we try to piece together their complicated relationship and see Plankton try to learn a bit of empathy in the hopes to get back with her. And it's actually kind of funny and sweet. It certainly shows the characters being more than just villains and adds something to them. Plus, it is nice to see that Plankton has an arc in this film and actually is the main focus, which was a major problem with Saving Bikini Bottom. Not only did Sandy not have an arc in that film, she really got upstaged by SpongeBob. He's in the film more than she is, and it's her film. But that's not the case here. It's advertised as Plankton's movie, and it certainly is. And he does work as the main character. Plus, the film does have a great third act conclusion with him and SpongeBob, as well as Karen's friends, Sandy, Mrs. Puff, and Pearl, trying to stop her from going full evil. It's really silly, but it's pretty fun. So, based on that, you think that this film is pretty good from what I've told you, right? Well, I can't call it good because it does have some problems that bring it down. And let's start off with one of the big ones, being that the story itself is rather thin. The premise is good, but it's not the kind of premise for a full-length feature film. And I know that because this was not initially intended to be a film. Mr. Lawrence envisioned and pitched it as a 30-minute TV special, and I can tell. The film is really padded and has scenes that go on just to get the runtime to a certain length. Like, there are so many scenes where SpongeBob hypnotizes Plankton just so they can launch into a backstory with him and Karen, and it's pretty obvious that it's only there to get the film to a certain runtime. The scenes are cute, but they don't really add anything to the grand narrative, so we don't spend a whole lot of time focused on the current situation. The film doesn't spend a lot of time in the present, and I found that quite strange. I get wanting to learn more about Plankton in order to understand where he and Karen are at right now, and even though I thought the scenes were nice, the film needed way more of the present than the past. The comedy of the film is also hit and miss. It definitely got a couple of chuckles out of me, mainly during the third act. One of the best jokes shows Plankton looking like he was playing a giant grand piano, but then the camera pans and he's actually playing one that's his size on the larger grand piano. That was a good bit, but there are jokes that certainly do not land.
Don't touch anything without asking me first.
Hey, Plankton, can I touch this? Sorry, Plankton, I have to touch this.
Ha ha ha. Yeah, I haven't heard that one before. I think that was in a film school textbook I got on overused film jokes you shouldn't use. I think it was joke 147 or something like that. But at the very least, none of the comedy is exceptionally unfunny and made me groan. There's nothing on the lines of,
And all my streaming videos on demand.
yeah, that. I will say this, SpongeBob is better here than he was in that film, but he still did get a bit annoying. Not to mention, he didn't do that much. I honestly thought he and Plankton had a much better team up in Sponge Out of Water than here. At least both of them did things together, whereas in this film, Plankton and other characters seem to do a lot more heavy lifting than him. They should have given him more to do and also made him a bit less annoying, or just minimized his presence entirely. The film also has musical numbers too, and they're okay. They're honestly kind of forgettable, and also most of them are just there for padding. They don't really add anything to the story apart from just getting the runtime to over an hour. However, there is one thing that does drag down the film, and that is unfortunately the animation, cause it's rough. The computer animation in this film isn't as bad as Saving Bikini Bottom, but it's still really not good. It's very clunky, the movements are rigged, and a lot of the fast-paced slapstick doesn't really land. It's weird, because this film was animated by Micros, and they've worked well with low-budget animated films and can turn out great results, but this was not their best work. It seemed like there was a lot of restraint here that prevented them from going as far as they wanted. I can see there were some great gags that were boarded in the storyboard process, but the animation itself just fails it. And what makes the computer animation even worse is the traditional animation moments the film has, and that stuff is terrific. The film goes experimental with certain moments and mirrors other animation styles like the rubber hose style of the 1920s, the crummy Transformers look of the TV animation in the 80s, and even a whole psychedelic animation scene, and it's really great. The animation truly comes alive here, and it was well done. But it only just reinforces how poor the computer animation was, and it just made me wish the film was animated entirely in 2D instead. I honestly think if this film was completely 2D, I'd probably like it a lot more than the final result we got. It's a shame that it had to be brought down like that. There's also things that I could mention too, like certain other SpongeBob characters could have been utilized better, but that's only a nitpick, honestly. At the very least, more of the characters were given things to do here than in the last SpongeBob spin-off movie. So, yeah, I can say that Plankton the movie is an improvement, but as a film, it's nothing exceptional. While it does have a decent premise, some great traditional animation sequences, and I liked how they explored Plankton and Karen, the film doesn't reach anything grand due to the story being padded from its original TV special pitch, the musical numbers being quite forgettable, and the computer animation being quite bad. I certainly wouldn't call this a bad film, and if you're a big SpongeBob fan, you'll have a bit of fun with this. That being said, it's not an essential watch, so if you want to pass on it, you're not missing much. It's a take it or leave it film. So, I think I'll give Plankton the movie a 6. It's perfectly fine. I don't know if Nickelodeon has plans to make another SpongeBob spin-off film after this, but hopefully they can get better if it's more like this, since this is a step in the right direction after the last two films, and does have some fun moments even if it's not exceptional. So overall, while this film might match the height of its main character of being small and nothing great, it does have a few moments to make it a perfectly fine affair.
I touch this one just with my pinky.
That's carbonated! Handsome gas.